Well, good evening and hello. Welcome to the Carr Brothers show. It's episode 134. I'm Jack.
And I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jody, the third of the three Carr Brothers. And boy, do we have a show tonight to
Yes,
talk
we
about
do.
the latest ongoing things that are happening around the world, affecting Canada, affecting New Brunswick with the tariffs.
Affecting the world, really.
But also, we're here with just us this time. You know,
Right.
we got a clear show with just things we want to talk about and what our viewers want to hear.
Right, yes.
Us talk about.
We got to thank our viewers too, because we're expanding on CHCO. We have, in case people do not realize yet, that we've been on the Bell Alliance for quite a long time, and then now recently in the last year moved on Rogers TV and Shell, or not Rogers TV, Rogers Cable and Shaw Cable. So anyone that has cable in New Brunswick essentially has access to CHCO TV and the Carr Brothers show.
And so CHCO is an independent community, and it's probably that'll be the first across New Brunswick that's
Brunswick's
available, only independent, and it's available to every household now.
Yeah.
And
this is very recent.
Yeah,
Just in the
say,
fall.
say 6 months, yeah, something like that.
So that's really good.
And we're also on our Facebook page, the Carr Brothers Facebook page, and our YouTube channel, and also on your favorite podcaster.
Yeah.
And if there's something people want to watch or hear about or talk to or have us bring someone on to talk about, make a comment there on your
Yes.
Facebook page. But if you're, how do you get a hold of us if you're watching just through CHCO
Just
or
send us a private
Rogers?
message.
Send us a private message.
Private
Facebook.
message, go on Facebook. Those would
Send
be the
us
two
a
main
message
things.
there, yeah.
Get a message to Vicky if you need to, and she'll circle
Right.
it back
Yes,
around.
She'll circle it. Call Vicky.
Always looking for new content, new
Yeah.
guests to bring on with different perspectives and what their experiences in life and different things they want to talk about. Last week we talked to Jack McDougall, and he brought a story to us that I wasn't aware of with the St. John jail fire 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was a very interesting discussion. So
He contends that
lots of promotion.
He contends that a fellow or another prisoner or whatever jailmate was wrongly convicted,
convicted.
wrongly convicted of this fire, and he wants it reopened. So
Have it, even though I guess not even though it's still a long time, 5 years served, but that's still 5 years too many in Jack's mind. So we'd like to see that vindicated and corrected.
and told us more about the story of the Imperial Theatre restoration
I
in
know.
St. John.
Fascinating.
Very neat. It's a story that should continue to keep being told as our history and the history of the Imperial Theatre.
Right, and as a political organizer, former, he's not as much of an organizer now, very much an observer of politics, of course, as if anyone follows Jack on Facebook. But it's good to have that perspective from 15, 10, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Especially for, say, newer people in politics. That it's good to know the history, isn't it, of some of
Very
our
much.
some of our former politicians or organizers, and you can learn a lot. Could learn a lot.
Governments, all sorts of different little behind-the-scenes information. So if you have, to our viewers, if you have special guests you think that should be acknowledged or have a story to tell, and we can maybe get lined up with them, so send them our way. And it would be interesting. We love New Brunswick-based stories, New Brunswick-based history, and it's just interesting to know and understand and promote. So, Jody, you're digging into the weeds there.
Just seeing how our plants are growing. I'm thinking we need some garden talk later this spring. Maybe
the spring before
just
before
check
the gardening
see
season
how they're all
starts.
watered out. They're good. Big news this week. Trump blinked on the tariffs.
Yes.
Is that the story? Is it Trump that blinked or Trudeau blinked?
Well, that's the question. That's
What's
the
your
big
opinion?
question.
What's your thought on it?
Well, but the fact is that it's been put on hold.
True. That we do know. That we do know.
30 days on hold, and I guess that's what everyone was hopeful for, at least at the time the deadline had come and gone. And first it was putting on hold with Mexico, and then later on this Monday was Canada's being on hold. Of course, Trudeau and Trump had their conversation, and originally it was 25% tariff on all goods, and then going to the U.S. and then 10% for any energy going to the U.S., which which would be devastating for the U.S. just as much as Canada.
Yeah.
The consumers would be the ones, and the residents would be the ones really suffering hard.
Trump putting additional tax on his own citizens for the products that they require, they need.
They need that, especially those energy. So I think it hit home too. Like Irving Oil sent out a letter to all of their customers in New England, especially, and said, you know, you're going to get a 10% increase, and it's
going to be directly you that pays for it.
Yes, pay for it.
And I think the bottom line.
That
But there's
was
so
really
much
going to hurt.
more that it would have felt. I mean, every stick of lumber people would have bought, anything that came from Canada to go down, beef, chicken,
fish,
anything. Chicken.
It's kind of like, you want to go down this road, we can go down this road. And I appreciated Canada's response is, you know, tit for tat, and we go right back to, hey, if you've got tariffs, we're going to put tariffs. And in the end, is this all going to make a difference? I give 25%, you give 25%. It's going to hurt everybody.
Inflation increases it. So they put a pause on it, and Trudeau promised
big promises.
A lot of money.
To protect the border, go back to the $1.3 billion plan, have 10,000 personnel on the borders, and I'd like to think that's sort of what I thought even early on, that was Trump's objective, was to somehow show the American people that he's getting tough on the borders without having to build the wall,
without having to do anything
Mexico.
himself.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So
because that's been what he's been saying since he was first elected. He said we're going to build the wall and Mexico's going to pay for it.
Yeah.
And he's basically built the wall now, finished it with manpower, and Mexico and Canada are paying for it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people on social media saying, well, if he doesn't want people coming in, he should man the borders.
Well, that's the idea, isn't it? Really makes sense that
protect his own. Well, who's protecting Canada from all the illegal guns coming into Canada?
Our border patrol, right? And so
exactly,
there's only 43 pounds or 4,300 pounds of whatever fentanyl coming in.
Yeah.
Then our border has done a decent job stopping that to come in.
But the amount of illegal guns, even though, is astronomical from the U.S. to Canada. Yes. So. You know, I know we want to be patriotic, but there's a leadership that's changing, but a leadership that's been in power for 9 years in Canada, and maybe Trump saying enough is enough. It's not a secret that Biden and Trump has wanted Canada to be tougher on their borders. So if there's any positives, it's brought Canada together as a people, and hopefully protect our borders even stronger.
Yeah.
It's so funny though, because if America is so concerned about what's coming into their country, then they need to beef up their own border patrol people at the border. That's who you go down through, is you go to the American officials when you're going into America. So anyway,
he's using all of that just for triggers, you know, and I agree with some of the pundits. His his goal isn't necessarily just borders and drugs coming in. It's his goal is he's gonna try to upset our sovereignty some way.
Yeah, and he wants to show the American people that he's tough on his neighbors and everyone else, and that he's in control and he's the boss. It's basically he's trying to show the American people, and that he's got this one caving and that one caving. And so if we just be smart in terms of our collective response and don't play into his game of looking like we're panicking, it's like, no, this is what we're doing, and stay steady and stay statesman person-like, and don't get into dividing each other between provinces, playing his game.
Right.
You know, but
because really we need to continue not to be complacent in the world that's ever changing, and nothing is certain.
No. The only thing that's certain is uncertainty.
Right, and you can't get comfortable with it. It's always going to be this way. You know, you see in Ukraine, you see in other places, in the Middle East. So Canada is no different when it comes to the whole world action. So if anything, it's brought us together, I think, as a country, and hopefully sharpened us up on borders, border protection.
And trust. Who do you trust now? Because you can't trust him.
No.
Basically. He has his agenda, and he's going to keep pushing. And he'll just keep pushing to see how far we'll be pushed. And
we almost have to strategically get ahead of it with our media and communications, and with some of the American media.
Yeah,
but
anyway. and Ford's been doing that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
He's been on the news down in the U.S. Right. I know. So he's announced a few other things with this package, the fentanyl czar, which is, I mean, you can put a person in place. I don't know what their objectives would be, or their terms of reference would be, or their job description, but they would have that person in place. A U.S.-Canada joint strike force, and as well as the 10,000 people on the border. So in 30 days, I don't see where those things are going to be able to show any differences made, but at least they'll be in place.
The symbol
and
of
a plan forward. So we'll see if that settles him enough, if he's happy with that or not, and if he just says 25% anyway, who knows?
Yeah.
But we'll see. So there's some big ticket items there, and a lot of.
Well, let's go back to when earlier when Trump announced that he was imposing the 25% on goods and 10% on energy. Canada shot back, and after the joint premiers meetings and things like that, and said they'd impose their counter tariffs of $155 billion of U.S. goods. But then the provinces announced some of their things, particularly when it came to a few of them anyway, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Ontario, that effective, would have been effective
Tuesday at
midnight.
Or Monday at midnight.
Monday at midnight. All liquor, U.S. liquor and beer would be off the shelves. That's a big. New Brunswick is 40 million, but in the grand scheme of things, Ontario is 1 billion.
I know.
That's
BC's big too.
Ontario is their biggest purchaser of U.S. alcohol.
And it was interesting, someone put it out there that Kentucky, their number one buyer for bourbon, is Canada. So if Canada did this, it's going to affect that state significantly.
And am I right that Trudeau or Team Canada or whatever was just targeting red states?
They talked
in
about
the US?
They talked about it.
I know David Eby from BC. He strictly said we are targeting the red states,
the Republican states.
Yeah, and that's where it's got to hurt them, I guess. Really, if you're gonna do it.
Who's got the ear of the president would be those Republican
But some of those
governors.
premiers, they hit hard right out the gate. And Susan waited probably 24 hours after the rest of them to basically all she has is liquor, American liquor. There's not much else she can.
For imports.
Very tough, wouldn't it be? Because our 90-some% of our exports is to the U.S.
Yeah.
It's a big part of our economy. It's pretty.
So
So you got to be somewhat tough, but you can't.
Well, she's limited though on what she could
because it would be imports.
Right. So the alcohol was a big one, and you see people complaining, well, why wouldn't you sell it? You've already paid for it. Well, number one, we don't even know how that payment scheme goes.
Right.
Do you pay for it after you sell it or not? Regardless, the stuff rarely goes bad. It spoils. It's just as simple as putting it in the warehouse, and lo and behold, probably didn't even get off the shelf anyways, and it's back on for sale for 30 days.
For now, but they're not buying new product yet.
No, which is different than the other provinces. Some of them have said they'll just continue as business as usual, but Susan said that once this stock's out, we're not buying anymore.
Until we see.
So that's interesting.
What's going on in the next 30 days.
Which we all know will change. Probably it'll change, be so fluid between now and 30 days. It might change this Saturday for all anybody knows.
True.
And Holt also said too that that there wouldn't be a whole lot of resources provincially for New Brunswick companies for compensation, compensation, that sort of thing, or a bailout type thing. So she made that clear yesterday or the day before.
Well,
this week.
I think it's quite prudent because how are you going to measure it first?
Right. Yeah.
And say, I suppose you can provide some sort of supports and some sort of transitioning, but they need to transition by finding other markets, with the product, and go to Greenland, go to the European Union, Asia, potentially other places. And we can help with that. But softwood lumber, you're going to start now. I mean, we already subsidized the forestry industry, and then now we're going to, So I think she's smart to kind of just say we can't get into that if the Trudeau and the federal government wants to look at how they could make some sort of.
Well, and it should be a federal. It should be a federal program.
Yeah.
So that all provinces and jurisdictions and industries are looked at.
I just don't see how they're going to provide a compensation.
I know, but look during COVID, they did CERB and rolled it out, and that's all turned out to be a disaster, right? So.
I know, that's the point. So
maybe that's learning from that to say there wouldn't be much for compensation. Because some companies were mulling over moving their production to the United States. You get JDI and Irving, you get the Cooks,
so you want
McCain's.
So it's not so much compensation, it's more like incentives to stay and diversify and redirect to markets where you can sell your product. That's usually what we do as a government, is help people market their product.
I think the federal government needs to be aggressive with that message.
Yeah.
Right? Because the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks is going to be crucial on those businesses. They're thinking on that and where they can sustain themselves.
And what they talked, this uncertainty doesn't help. So just the discussion and the distraction and the uncertainty of, are there tariffs, are there not tariffs, what's going to happen? And but what's interesting, what actually spoke loud to Trump was the stock market in the U.S. When he announced those tariffs started to go down. And that was going to have even more major impact, that and the impact on his own residents. So that hopefully has sent a message to him. And that's why he gave a delay. Also, Trudeau we already announced we were going to do some of these border things in December. So now, of course, Trump's trying to position, it's just like politics, he's trying to position this was his win.
You get the credit.
Well, that's the key, is show that each side has a win and save face, and it's negotiating and dealing with governments.
And I guess the only thing Trudeau and the governments in Canada can focus on is what our constituents and our citizens feel. And if they think Trudeau did a good job and they think the premiers are doing a good job, that's probably the most important. I get a little distracted thinking, well, the Americans should know that Trump's not doing. That's not how that all went. But we can't. It's hard enough to control what we're doing, what our people think, let alone what they think. And
it's a good point, because it's trying to be correct on. Well, there's not that much fentanyl that gets in and things like that. Well, a lot of it is the positioning of Trump, whether it's China in play, Mexico. I don't know if it's as much Canada on fentanyl, but it's thrown that all in there.
Yeah, right. And if Trump needs a bit of a win to do such and such to make it seem like he's done something, sometimes you got to give that up when you're negotiating, when you're
rather than being right. And
now
you hit the nail on the head too about distraction.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, what I like to think about is, is there a bigger thing, a bigger distraction, a bigger motive than ticking off and breaking the trust of your best friend? Like, is there another motive that's going on? Is there a distraction? And I guess we really won't know until something might happen.
Yeah, well, we've seen it before. I think he gets off on being a bully and making it seem like he's a big negotiator, and that he's powerful and he's the negotiator and he's shock and awe and he's gonna
get people disrupted.
I agree with Jack. There's something more to what he's up to. Other than just shocking on everybody, I think he's him and his little band of comrades there. They've got something else up their sleeve. There's obviously lots of things in Canada that they want. Water is one thing.
Yeah.
Land,
natural resources.
The natural resources. They need that type of stuff, and there's other ways to get those types of things rather than hammer your neighbors with tariffs and just push them into a corner. You can negotiate those things all day long.
But it's interesting. Why you target your friends first, and then is it a bigger picture of it, whether it's Russia or China? Well, he did add the 10% on China, but is it putting on hold Mexico and Canada, but still keeping the 10% on China, not targeting just China first?
Well, maybe you're right.
It's all
China came back with 15 on their own.
Yes, that's right.
They're going to put 15 on Trump. Hold my beer.
For our products going there.
For USA products going to China. Yeah, they're going to put 15 on.
So they upped them.
They upped the ante.
We'll what is it? You'll hear year 10 and we'll see year 10 and go up 5.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's what all this is going to end up being, is who.
I know.
So consumers will pay more. We'll all pay more.
Right.
It's the poor people, or not just the poor people, but the people that are making their
middle class are paying the bills and paying the taxes,
trying to get by.
And we're going to pay, and the fat cats that are putting the tariffs on, they're going to be fine.
And I was thinking the other day, because you see some hockey games, and there was another sporting event, maybe it was hockey as well, with the U.S., maybe it was the Raptors game, and booing the American anthem. And I got thinking too, a lot of us have friends, have professional colleagues or business partners, whatever it might be, that are U.S. and Canadian across the borders. And the last thing, because who wins when we're fighting and we're booing each other is Trump. And that's division, and that's, it's the everyday people have nothing to do with these decisions. And so I felt bad. I felt bad about the booing and things, because I know it's not directed towards the people per se.
Imagine the poor people that were singing the anthem, how they felt.
Yes, exactly.
When all these people are booing, and some of them have never done it before.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's the division, it's the chaos, it's the conflict that keeps people in positions of power like Trump happy.
Yeah, because the people are just divided and distracted, and So.
Well, how about we take a little break? Okay. When we come back, we'll talk about some of the discussion that people are having on brands and supporting local and supporting Buy Canada and just the different things that we've heard over the last number of days on what they're doing and how they're buying and who they want to punish and not buy from. How about we do that?
Okay.
So let's come back in a few minutes. We'll listen to some public service announcements from CHCO Television, and we'll be back in a few.
And welcome back to the Carr Brothers Show. It's episode 134. I'm Jack.
And I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jody, the third of the three Carr Brothers.
And well, we've had great discussion so far. It's a serious discussion, but it's very profound. What we're faced with is one of our long-standing best friends, the United States. Basically, the administration at odds
stabbed us in the back.
They did. They got us off our game a bit, but I think we've rallied around. We can't be complacent. We've got a 30-day reprieve. That there weren't any tariffs put on, U.S. products here in Canada, and so that gives us some time to continue to mobilize. And I think one of the things we haven't talked about yet is reducing interprovincial trade barriers.
Right.
Everyone's talking about that.
This is really a good kick in the butt for Canada as a whole to start thinking differently, right?
Right.
We're so dependent on the U.S. markets. Start thinking differently. Take down those barriers between provinces, like you say.
I got a question, though. In your experience, what barriers exist between the provinces that you know of?
So alcohol is a big deal.
Alcohol is the big one.
No, it is. Between provinces, alcohol is probably the biggest. Maneuverability of workforces sometimes on procurements,
labor agreements,
like
labor movement.
There are some deficiencies between provinces. I stood in the legislature quite a few times when I was in opposition and complained because Quebec companies were coming in New Brunswick and underbidding New Brunswick companies. Just they have a different subsidy regime for Quebec companies, even right down to subsidizing for daycares. It all makes a difference when you're trying to compete.
So I'd be curious to know what...
So there are some things,
only products I could think
but they have to get in the room and sort it out.
The only products I could think of that had a barrier was the alcohol.
Alcohol's a big one.
So I'm not really sure how reducing those barriers will... I suppose our reliance on American products.
Well, let's say
we'll have more options with Canadian products.
Or if you want to talk about alcohol, say Ontario, a very big producer of wine. So to trade interprovincially, if you want a nice bottle of wine from Ontario, it's a lot more difficult and things like that. So a lot more barriers.
Well, I know
vice versa.
Even the craft brewers here in the Fredericton region, they struggle moving their craft brew between provinces or bringing in Nova Scotia craft brew into New Brunswick. And I think there's obviously it's protectionism, really. I mean, MB Liquor they've got their mandate to make profits and do what they do, but they're all going to have to work. I'm sure there's a laundry list of different things. Yeah. There has to be. There's been lots of reports put out on interprovincial trade and barriers and things like that. But the things to me that come top of mind is mobility of labor and procurement and the alcohol and spirits and wine. To me is the big thing. The ins and outs of them, I don't understand them completely. Although procurement I did get into a little bit as an MLA, but there's got to be more. There has to be more. And it's probably cumbersome for trucking companies to get to Halifax to pick up, merchandise because they do have that tariff or that toll on the highway, the 4-lane highway. So maybe there's other ones.
Yeah.
But there's obviously a discussion that has to happen around it, and they've had their little tails kicked into gear to do that.
And obviously, hopefully, talk together as a team of what we can do to
what can they each give up?
Canada.
Maybe there's half a dozen things. Maybe they don't give up everything, but maybe they work on some things so that we can be better, more self-sufficient.
Well, one notable topic is that East Coast pipeline, or transport of fuel of gas oil to the east again, and can we get that out to other markets besides the U.S.?
Right.
So.
Well, a lot of the critics say that will never ever be built now because the proponent walked away. But if the conditions are favorable, does another proponent come along?
Exactly.
If that would have happened when it was first being designed and talked about before Trudeau changed the bills, to limit that, it would have been built by now. and there would have been all that much more volume of crude coming to St.
markets.
John to either ship out or prevent, Irving Oil from importing outside crude, because that's what they have to do right now.
So the opposition in Canada wants some of them have called for the Parliament to come back to discuss this. I have a hard time wondering what they need to decide in Parliament. If they're all in agreement supporting Trudeau in his position and Canada's position of counter tariffs and whatnot, then I don't know if going back to the Parliament's going to help anything except show the Americans if there's any division. What would also be interesting is when the new leader or prime minister gets elected by the Liberal Party, what's that person going to? How are they going to operate?
Yes.
How are they going to pull the provinces together and pull their team together, and whether they actually try to extend Parliament,
avoid an election,
avoid an election now, or
and who's been very, very quiet right now? Jagmeet Singh.
Yeah.
And so that's what some will say, is that the new prime minister work another deal with him, get it extended, so Parliament stays together again this fall. Others have even mused, and maybe they'll try to go even to 2026.
Yeah.
Because of this crisis, quote unquote crisis.
Yes, I know. And the thing is, it's interesting because who said, in times of turmoil and uncertainty, whatever, leaders can step up when they're least expected. And who's going to actually step up and provide? And
who has that ability?
I think Jagmeet Singh doesn't have the ability to do it. No. And I think partially he's either getting bought off or negotiated with, or he's staying quiet because he doesn't know the answers. He doesn't know what to do. Right. He's not the leader of this country that we need. I don't know yet who actually is, but...
Well, you know who I've been impressed on LinkedIn? Jean Charest.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
His interviews.
I know. His experience.
Because I think he was
he's on the committee.
He was, deputy prime minister, I know, but he was international affairs minister, was he? I feel like he was. Foreign affairs.
Like foreign affairs?
I don't know.
Yeah,
but his interviews are just what we do need as a country, and he speaks so diplomatically, so with confidence.
Well, with no nonsense. He doesn't talk about the googly goop and calling people names and undermining people. Like, he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
He's on a great choice to have him on that tariff committee, for lack of a better name. I don't know what it's called.
Oh, he's on the tariff committee.
He is. He's on that the committee that Trudeau put in place, that task force. Yes. Wow. With Arlene Dickinson and all those other ones. And and he's a great choice because he has the experience. He's been through tariff wars.
Oh, yeah.
So he would have been a great choice as leader of the Conservative Party, thinking back, to get us through that. Because the Conservative Party, unless a real disaster happens, are going to form the next government. And Pierre would be well suited to have Jean Charest part of that, because that negotiation has to be ongoing all the time. You can't just throw that task force together when it's up for crisis.
But it's going to be interesting if Pierre.
But you're so right.
If Pierre Poilievre will have the ability to reach out to other political persuasions, even if they're conservatives, will he reach out to the progressive conservatives and involve and have people involved? I haven't seen that willingness from him yet to reach out to involve people. It's usually dismissing those people.
Campaigning's one thing, but then we all know.
Well, that's what a lot of people are hoping, is that he will campaign on the right and govern by the center. But
we'll see.
We'll see.
So going back to your original thought on Parliament being called back. The only advantage I see, and it's not needed right now, but if Trump would have kept the tariffs on, and the federal government decided that some sort of a bailout package or something, a set of package or a money package needed to go together, I think they would have to probably pass some legislation to do that. That would be the only advantage I would see.
Yeah.
Otherwise, going back in there, we've seen dysfunction at House of Commons up till this point.
But I suppose they have to go back at some point.
Well, they will
for
in
a
March.
budget that comes up in March.
I know. So it's at some point it'll have to happen. But do we want the division on full display right now again? I mean, it was on display up until it was paroled.
Well, there's March break coming. I mean, what would be the point right now?
Well, and I feel like
they will have to get a new budget put through. I'm assuming Carney's going to get the leadership, but maybe not. Maybe it'd be Freeland, like Jack McDougall wants.
Right.
But I feel, though, that for the Conservatives, and of course, I mean, it's no secret, I'm a conservative, leaning that way, of course, that's, but for them to call for Parliament back, I think is disingenuous. I don't think that suits them. because it comes across as selfish.
I want
it's
power at all costs.
Right. Yeah, so that's how I feel about that. I don't think there really should be a call to, first off, it's not going to happen. So,
well, like sending the letter to the Governor General, asking her to call her back when she doesn't have that power.
No, I know. So it's...
but, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a good discussion. But yeah, so back about Jean Charest, I've been impressed with his videos or the clips that he puts on LinkedIn from his
and Twitter
interviews, United States interviews and Canadian interviews. So I haven't been on Twitter in the last couple months.
Oh, dry couple months.
Dry.
Well, you're not missing anything.
Well, I know.
Really, you just get a whole bunch of American stuff.
Yes.
Apparently these tariffs,
but the problem is, I love it. And it's a love sort of, I wouldn't necessarily hate, but you can get down on these rabbit tracks and rabbit holes and things on Twitter, and then the negativity, but I used a lot of it to gather my news. The hard part is there is a lot of quote unquote fake news on there, and you get down about UAPs and UFOs and healthcare and all this sort of stuff and conspiracies.
And Kanye West and this one and that one, getting the Grammy and not getting the Grammy.
I mean, just blocked that all out about Beyonce getting the Grammy or not.
I know.
But then
they said George Strait won the most recent
hip-hop artist of the year.
Boy, are we ever off track.
But I haven't really been on Twitter at all in 2 months, and it's been nice to have a little cleanse there because of the negativity as well and the confrontation.
I've unfollowed a lot of Twitter accounts
That's another idea.
Since not being elected anymore. Because a lot of them I followed for political purposes, see what's going on in other provinces. Some of the ministers I served with from other provinces, I just stopped following a lot of it. But when you filter all that out, you're still left with a very narrow. So I keep all the news groups because I like watching CTV's Twitter and whatnot. But you get into a narrow little group of people that they're all like-minded, and your algorithms stay the same. And it's like, why do we even have this? Why do we even have Twitter anymore?
I'm hopeful that whoever takes over as leader of our country will have a discussion or have a thought about what we want as a country. If anything, we are all we've got, if you think about it that way. So it's like, okay, you got your provinces, you got your political parties, but do we see a country that can be positioned the way we once were? And I think we've lost some of that on the international stage under Trudeau. I'm sorry we did. We have. As much as he was heralded as this pro-feminist human rights, he really did a lot of damage with climate. Savior. But he really didn't fulfill anything, and internationally, and then actually was an embarrassment in some countries where he had some missteps. So.
Well, the ethics things alone, the number of them, ridiculously crazy. And we go back 10 years from when that election was happening, and people were so outraged by Harper and how terrible he was. Well, boy,
I know.
People elected Trudeau because they didn't like Harper, and here we will be again. And in 5 years, whoever gets elected in Trudeau's place, they'll be peed off at that person. They'll be no good. So
it'll be 5 weeks.
People as well need to understand and decide, what do they want?
True.
Good point.
It is.
What do they want?
It is.
They want to elect somebody at all costs just because they're the alternative, or they want somebody that can be in charge of the economy, public relations, foreign affairs, the way Harper did.
Pulling our provinces together.
Did he do everything perfectly? No.
No, one of his
But boy, we're in trouble now.
Yeah.
And building relationships with our provinces, providing leadership, but input, having a team,
Well, leadership is the biggest thing.
I know. And it's not dictatorship, it's leadership,
right.
Which is a difference, right?
It is. So anyhow, I had to get that off my chest.
No, that's good. Good point.
Yeah.
But people need to think. What do you want?
So, where are we at?
Well, even politically, provincially, here in our province, when you deal with the international, or the Canadian, interprovincial, and then with the international, with our government here in New Brunswick. The State of the Province address was just last week. Don't think there's been really many at all, if any, missteps by the whole government.
No, not really. They've played it pretty cool.
Not very aggressive either, but not making any missteps either. So
they seem to be holding steady and
keeping realist expectations low. I mean, there was an article this week talking about, and I think Glenn Savoy spoke on it quite a bit, the opposition leader, about how some of her goals and her targets are not aggressive. So, I mean, literacy was one of them, and people waiting for nursing homes. They just want to hold the line on that. It's kind of not what they campaigned on to be number one, but it's not an aggressive goal that most governments put in, and then they never reach them.
I know.
Because it's very difficult.
So you have your goal and your stretch goals, and sometimes, because they're going to be measured on that. And if
so they're not aggressive topics.
But they're still on their honeymoon stage, because I saw there on social media about the ER and at the Dr. Everett Chalmers Hospital, 100 people plus, and just a couple nights, maybe a few nights ago, just jammed right in, and you know, it's been a common thing, but in the hallways and all this sort of stuff. There's not really that outcry as much now, and that's kind of a typical thing when you get a new government. Yeah, when you get a new government, it's sort of back to a honeymoon, but you don't have that big sort of outcry about waiting lists for doctors. The ER lists are right out there.
So that signifies to you they're still kind of in a honeymoon stage, because people were outraged on those things 6 months ago for the election. So we'll see by the time the spring session gets through, do you think that honeymoon should be
wearing off?
Kind of wearing off, I would think. I mean, you just got to do a budget.
Well, that's it. It depends on the budget. So how big is the deficit going to be? If there is less of a deficit, it's because you have less revenue. You know, you're going to have more taxes, or you're going to have cuts, or there's going to be something. So how are they going to manage all that?
She talked about cuts.
People eventually are going to be mad about something.
Yeah.
So it's
cuts social programs.
I don't know how you do that, because she campaigned on
She promised to bolster them.
I know.
So we'll see. I mean, but I'll say those ministers have been out.
They are
out in public. They're not, and her as well. They're not stuck up on the 6th floor of Chancery
They're
Place.
meeting people. They're calling organizations, arranging meetings, visiting groups. You know, they're still going. They're
going to events.
Yeah. So it is refreshing to see.
But are they getting anything done? We'll wait and see.
Don't know.
I did find it struck me a little bit, although it's normal, that Aaron Kennedy wrote on, and he's been visiting a lot of, he's a minister of local government, so I guess he's in charge of the next stage of municipal reform, right? And he's been meeting with all these councils and things like that, and he says, you know, before we do our fiscal reform, we got to meet with all these people, but a lot of that was already done, and reports and papers have already been written, so we'll see. It's interesting, though, it's the typical
response
everybody
to that.
first. But he would have to do somewhat of that, rather than just taking Glenn's word for it, that it was done properly. So
do stakeholders, and Aaron does a good job with stakeholder relations. He first off knows a lot of people in the province to begin with, and then not shy to get up and say hi to them and take a selfie and say hi to them and this and that. And
he's very connected to the municipal world, because he was a CAO, so for Quispan, so he's very connected. So
okay, well, we better take a break here now, and we've had a great discussion.
Yes,
but let's take a break, and then we'll come right back to have some more discussion on the Carr Brothers.
Sounds good. Well, hi there. Welcome back to the Carr Brothers Show. It's episode 134. I'm Jack.
And I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jody. And yes, Jeff?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, we're so happy that everybody has tagged along tonight to listen to our discussion on tariffs and how the federal government's reacted and our provincial governments have reacted and whatnot, and just to kind of flesh it out. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of people have really shown on Facebook and social media and on the news how they really are starting to think differently about buying local and what that really means. Buying Canadian, what that really means. Is it manufactured in Canada? Is it imported into Canada? And just to pay attention to your labels. But what really struck my mind on it and caught my attention is now some of the store owners or the grocery store owners are putting the tags on. They're doing the research for people, and they're putting their tags with the Canadian flag or bought in Canada. And at the end of the day, though, not everybody can afford to just buy Canadian, because some Canadian goods are a lot more expensive than American or South American or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, we appreciate people coming along for the ride on that and having that discussion. And
And there's, people are saying, well, boycott Costco as an example.
Right.
Walmart. Or go to some place where
Kent's rather than Home Depot.
Yeah, as an example. But I still wonder about, there's Canadian products in those, and there's employees that are getting a job out of it. I guess I wonder if it would be better to maybe look at the product you're buying and seeing if it's Canadian or American or another country.
Because there has been people.
Are you going to buy China over American? Maybe, I guess, but I don't know.
But I guess it's the main thing. I guess is to do research labels anyway, but also if it's where it's made and be cognizant as well of what's on the label too.
Yeah. And it doesn't hurt any time to support a local entrepreneur, especially in New Brunswick with our entrepreneurs.
Yeah, we've seen on social media and Facebook the lists. People are sharing lists all over I can't even keep up to them all. The only thing I recognized that caught my eye was Hellman's mayonnaise. Avoid that and go with the other. But there's so many different things on there that people are doing the research. Can you believe all of it? I don't know. I think the best thing is when you go into a supermarket or a store, and if it's got the label there or you read the label, then you know. Unless it's the French's ketchup that we all recognize, or Heinz ketchup. But Jody, you're right. It's just a matter of, I think, looking down close at what you can afford and what you want to buy, and to go on with your comment about boycotting certain businesses, Blair Hislop from Mrs. Dunster's Donuts at Sussex, he wrote on, I think on LinkedIn, that's not going to help, like you say, to just boycott businesses in a blanket way, because they do help drive our economy in certain ways and keep people employed. And if you want to go into Costco or Walmart and boycott, then boycott the individual items if you can, because they employ a lot of people and they pay them very well here in New Brunswick. So if they're out of work, then that's kind of defeating the purpose of what we're trying to do. So lots of chitter chatter around that and whatnot. And we also talked about how our provincial government responded, and Glenn Savoy had a little bit of the opposition leader had a little bit of a statement on it, but that was on Saturday before everything got way out of hand, and it was kind of a keep your powder dry, go along and do what you have to do for New Brunswickers and whatnot. It wasn't forceful. It wasn't. He wasn't hitting hard at anybody either. He was keeping it calm, and which is sometimes we're not used to that as opposition members on either side. To see that, but it was more or less middle of the road.
Well, it could have go two things. First, keep with the theme of working together when you have an international issue, and then secondly, because of Susan, the Premier's response was she doesn't have a whole lot to sort of go on either of counter tariffs and counter things. So, which then relates to the opposition of not really having a whole lot either to say.
Right.
So,
but they've been quiet on most things.
Yes,
Glenn's been mostly the spokesperson on most of the items, and when there were any, Susan's played it pretty safe. So
did I read that there was no comment by the opposition at the State of the Province address after it was over?
I think you might have at the time, and I think just recently, in the last couple of days, Glenn did come out and weigh in on that conversation. On the budgeting piece, but on their targets.
Benchmarks.
Her benchmarks and targets that weren't aggressive. But Glenn was at the State of the Province. I did see him in some photos there, so which he should be. I didn't see any other PC members in any photos, so I don't know if anybody else got to go or not. Probably David Coon was there, assuming. But, but they've been quiet, but there hasn't been a whole lot to... But sometimes if there's not a whole lot to talk about in opposition, you gotta drum up your business. You gotta drum up your business,
You gotta
There's always a slippery road somewhere, or a road that's not sanded or salted, or somebody's garbage isn't being picked up right. I mean, you gotta
drum this stuff.
You gotta drum her up. That's the fun of it.
Maybe this environment of international with the States is toning down some of the internal rhetoric between politicals.
Maybe they've decided as a group that's time to change the style of it and keep the rhetoric down.
And speak when there's an issue to be spoken about, I guess.
People listen to it more then. pay attention to it more.
But yeah, it's you're right. Being in opposition, it's knowing to push harder and knowing to put the brake on a little, and then I'm sure it'll get ramped up as the legislature gets opened up here this spring in March. I think it is.
Well, especially with the new budget. If Susan's already talked about cuts,
more cuts
coming because of whatever reason. There's a lot of reasons why the budget could be a challenge. Is the potential impact of the dollar and the potential impact of the tariffs, and also the impact of the promises that she made. And also you get in, it's a lot harder than
once you get that hood opened up, once you get that hood opened up, then that's when you start seeing the issues.
Yeah, and we know that, I think we kind of know that, like, Blaine Higgs had a promise of, I forget, $400 million in spending, but it was it was basically going to require repurposing, reimagining, revisioning healthcare.
Yeah.
Basically finding internal cuts to pay for it. So there's, even if the budget is where it is today, there's costs that are required. There's always a certain level of internal cuts and streamlining. So it's the government of the day to prioritize where that happens. And that's something the opposition will take a look at, and how much money is coming from the federal government, and with transfers, so that'll give people something to chew on when we see what the priorities are and what can be done and what won't be done.
Well, we've spent a combined, I believe it's 35 years in the provincial legislature combined. 35, I believe it is, around that.
Right.
And so now there's just announced this week, Alison Townsend, the MLA in Rossay, Minister
new MLA,
of Post-Secondary Education and Training and Labor, and lawyer as well. She's announced that she's been diagnosed with having a brain tumor, so has to take a step back from her role as minister and MLA. And so you guys, we've all had experiences with MLAs that would have had to take a step back, and those constituents, I'm sure, will be still well served. We want to sound out our best wishes to Minister Townsend. I've never met her myself. I don't know if you guys have. But,
no, I don't think so. If I did, it was just brief. And very capable. And so I guess really you just keep hoping and encouraging that she will fight this like she has in the past with the diagnosis, and
something
come back stronger than ever.
Really noticed, saw it even yesterday. Opposition MLAs sharing her story, sharing her post. Which that doesn't always happen.
No.
A lot, but they shared it, which shows a softer side to the opposition too. Like as far as having feelings,
a little bit of compassion.
It's not all punching and grinding, but which was good. It's never a good thing. And this is not her first time with the diagnosis of cancer,
she had breast cancer
10 years
before,
ago.
And from what I've read. So, and then Minister Jean-Claude Demers will fill in.
Capable at pedal, yes. He's a very experienced politician. He was a federal MP. He was a town councillor or city councillor in Edmundston. Never got a chance to be in government until now. When he was in federal MP, he was in opposition. Then opposition with the Glantz crowd, I suppose you could call it, and Susan's. But very capable, knowledgeable of the departments. Not a pushover either. So Jean-Claude and JC and I are kind of cut from the same cloth, that sometimes we don't always.
Not smooth around the edges as much.
No
soft pedaling.
Don't come in with a briefing note and don't think I didn't know something on there already. So anyway, very thorough. He's in IGA, Intergovernmental Affairs.
Yes, so it would be a lot on his plate right now with intergovernmental.
Well, right now there would be. So,
but then that ties in nice with the post-secondary education training labor. So there's a crossover there, interprovincial, like you said, labor force, things like that, issues like that. So anyway, I guess our point is wishing Minister Townsend the best in her recovery. And
quick diagnosis, eh?
Yes.
She was just at the Chalmers like 2 weekends ago, I think, or on the weekend, and was diagnosed right away with a brain tumor. So she must not have been feeling well, obviously.
No.
And they were quick to diagnose, which is really good. It gives her a chance to get
early diagnosis,
get at the fight. Get at the fight. So I remember going back to how heavy JC's plate is now with pedal. When you were the pedal minister, oh boy, the amount of discussions and trips to Ottawa and Toronto was just crazy trying to get labor market stuff sorted out. So
one time we even I get to represent the Premier at Premier's meeting,
right?
At the Premier's Councilors Federation. So that was pretty fun, yeah. Because a big topic at the time was labor agreements and.
So the Premier couldn't make it, and then he sent you. Yeah, that's cool.
I got to tag along as the executive assistant. It was a great experience.
It was really neat in the room, and then you're just like, I may never get in the Premier's room again. So
yeah,
they were all there.
It was fun.
All the big wigs.
Yeah, and of course, the very first item on the agenda was what's going to be said in the press release. So that was
got
fun.
that dug
Communique.
Good communique.
Yeah.
So we've seen colleagues in the past. No different than any other profession.
Well, it is a bit different, I think.
Well,
because
the people are different. You still get sick the same as everybody else.
Well,
but it's who's now going to look after your constituents.
Well, you're
double
in this public role.
And, there's no sick leave. You get your salary, but you're not. And you want to be working all the time, but you got to concentrate on your health. So it's a little different in that regard. But we've had colleagues in the past that have battle cancer and take step back. So,
and I think as a collective as an institution, that's like you mentioned about some MLA sharing it and things like that, and the opposition. And it's there is an institutional
family
feeling there of sticking together, because at the end of the day, it's the same. We're in the trenches, politicians helping people, trying to juggle family, trying to juggle events.
When Susan was in opposition, and I think Glenn Savoy in opposition now, you're bringing some honor back to at least opposition that sets the tone with how you're going to treat the government.
Right.
And I think the government maybe has a bit of respect for the legislature at this moment. We'll see how that continues. But bringing some honor and respect back between colleagues and still hit them hard on policy, but not on not below the knees on personality, character.
Well, the public needs that right now.
Mud smearing and all this.
Yeah.
We
The
do.
public needs that.
We do.
Yeah, we all have an example to do that. Well, I guess, guys, we're running out of time.
We're running out of time. Isn't that great?
Yeah. Well,
so we'll wait and see what we have in store for next week.
Yes.
If we have another guest back or not. Obviously, we
always
love to have a guest on.
We've got some irons in the fire
Yes,
out there.
we do.
But we do love to chit-chat and do our thing, and maybe a special announcement to come to the public's way in a week from now. So
boys, there's a team.
We'll keep everybody
on the edge of their toes.
Suspense.
the edge of their seats.
The edge of their seats. Well, you've heard it here.
Yes.
Watch next week for a big announcement.
That's right, guys. So that's been the great discussion here on episode 134.
Right.
And couldn't do it without our viewers watching, and those at CHCO, including Pat Watt, Flo Mitchell, and our very own director of our show here, Terry Gallant. So, and all our viewers at CHCO and on the Carr Brothers. With that, we want to just say good night. See you next time.
Good night.